Sir, good morning.
Good morning, Manny.
Yes, sir.
Teka lang, share ko lang yung screen ko.
Okay, no?
Pwede na ba ako magsimula?
Okay po, please. Salamat.
Malinaw na?
Malinaw po,
Okay.
malinaw.
Okay. So, good morning to all of you. So, it is my privilege to share to you a summary of my 2020 research entitled Widow of the Galleons, the artistic transformation of the Virgen de la Soledad in the colonial Philippines. I do hope that this 20-minute talk will help broaden our understanding of this icon of the Virgin Mary beyond its religious function into something more secular. I'm speaking here of being an artwork and being an artifact. Okay. The Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de Portavaga is no ordinary 17th century painting. In 2017, the Republic of the Philippines declared it as a national cultural treasure. This honor rests primarily on the fact that this image is the oldest known dated Marian painting in the Philippines so far, and the rich intangible heritage that developed around it. This is one of the rare cases wherein a national cultural treasure is declared together with its associated intangible heritage. So you have both the tangible, which is the painting, and the intangible heritage, which includes the oral traditions and the fiestas, all declared in one bunch as national cultural treasure. Now, the next year, 2018, Pope Francis wrote the Bull of Canonical Coronation, which is actually the highest possible honor given by the Church to a venerable image, be it a statue or a painting. In doing so, the Church acknowledges the miraculous nature of the image and affirms the authenticity of the popular cultus associated with it. This current research aims to look at the Portavaga painting from a different light and its place in the much bigger narrative of sacred art and global exchange from the 16th till the 19th centuries. The speaker wants to delve deeper actually into the following issues. Number one, the Portavaga painting as an important copy or variant of the Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de la Victoria, which was originally in Madrid. Number two, its dynamism as a work of art, which is constantly evolving and changing its visage through the centuries. And number three, the Cavite icon, I'm speaking here of the Portavaga Virgin, as a catalyst of an entirely Filipino way of imagining the sorrowful Virgin. You know, the idea of an entirely new type of Mater Dolorosa was actually the brainchild of Spanish royalty. As you see here, a painting of the royal court going through the baptism of Prince Fernando. In particular, it's Isabel Valois, who actually came from France. She's the third wife of Philip II of Spain, who commissioned a famous sculptor, Gaspar Becerra, to actually create a polychromatic statue of the Virgin Mary meditating on the Passion of Christ. She is to be called the Virgin of Solitude or Soledad because on the night of Good Friday, she was totally alone, contemplating the Passion of Christ, which she herself has seen with her own eyes. But it was the intervention of a lady of court, and her name is Doña Maria de la Cueva, Viuda de Oreña, Countess of Oreña, that actually transformed the masterpiece of Gaspar Becerra. Before it can even be displayed, this countess, which happens to be also assigned as the camarera or caretaker of this new image, insisted that to achieve the simple and dignified look so favored by the Council of Trent, the statue of Becerra should be dressed in the black and white robes of widowed Spanish noblewomen like herself. In case you're wondering, those women who are inside the red rectangle, mga madre ba sila? Are they nuns? Well, they are actually not nuns. Those are widowed members of the royal family and under members of the nobility who happen to be widows. So they are wearing these clothes called de luto. And I want you to take note of the shape of their clothing because the Condesa de Orenia, the Countess of Orenia, would insist that this new statue must wear that kind of clothing. Because one thing they've noticed is that there's a tendency in Spain, particularly to over decorate the Virgin. Now, the Council of Trent was warning them to tone down because this image of the Virgin Mary is not a doll. Hindi to mannequin, hindi to fashion model na pagandahan. So they decided to tone it down, and the Countess of Orenia specified, how can you be more toned down than this kind of garb? So this new statue of the Virgin Mary will not be dressed in the stylized Sevillana or in Jewish clothing. She will be dressed in the mourning clothes, pangluksa na damit of the Habsburg court. And so when it was finished in 1565, now you see the original statue, you will notice now that it bears an uncanny resemblance to those women because Mary is now dressed as a widow of the Habsburg court. This image was entrusted to, in turn, to the Frailes Minimos de San Francisco de Paula, or the Minim Friars, in their convent in La Victoria, Madrid. And this explains now why she has the title Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de la Victoria. The Padres Minimos, or the friars, were given two responsibilities in relation to this royal sponsor devotion. Number one, they have to promote it to the faithful, first in Spain and probably to the rest of the empire. And second, which is more important, they should referee or police the ranks so that people will not create unauthorized copies or probably create unauthorized cults of the Virgin Mary, independent to the one established by the royal family at La Victoria. So this is actually a heavily policed devotion. It's somewhat like putting a royal copyright or trademark on the Virgin Mary and making it sure that this devotion is approved across at least Spain and other parts of the empire. So because of this highly refereed atmosphere, it is interesting to note that the Padres Minimos were able to create a canon. When you say canon, they have fixed laws on how the Virgin should be depicted in reproductions. And they are always very clear. Unfortunately, I did not study sculpture, so I'll focus on the two-dimensional form, which is prints and paintings. And they're very, very clear. When you produce prints or paintings, it should be, and I'll take note of this, it should be a picture of the statue of Gaspar Becerra on display at La Victoria. It is something that should always be emphasized, that any two-dimensional copy should always be a picture of the Gaspar Becerra statue on display at La Victoria. So they are really very, very keen in protecting its design. They were able to create 4 basic Spanish templates. Honestly, these are the ones that are approved by both the friars at La Victoria and the royal family at El Escorial. And all of them are lovely, in fairness. All of them are beautiful. But it is the 4th pattern, we call it pattern D to your right, which truly captures our attention. This print is from La Rioja. And why does it capture our attention? Because it seems so familiar to us. It looks like the Portavaga of Cavite. Now we're, reversing the narrative. This is much older than the Portavaga. So pattern D is a close-up of the Becerra statue, but on a smaller table altar. There are only 2 candles, and the curtains are drawn to reveal a very intimate composition. In pattern D, the Bethera masterpiece is smaller and much more accessible to the viewer. Now, it's interesting to note that pattern D will be the favorite style for choice, particularly when it comes to domestic altars. When you say domestic altars, these are the altars at home, not the ones in church, because these are very small prints or paintings. It is interesting to note also that pattern D would eventually become the favorite template for small-scale paintings for home use. To your right is a 17th century oil painting of the Soledad from the Madrid Atelier. It is practically pattern D in color. Now, for some reasons, the artists are allowed to get rid of some minor details like candles, etc. Get rid of the stylized knots. But one rule must not be violated. The Virgin must always remain simple and unadorned, just like the original statue of Bethera at La Victoria Convent. Now, well, as everybody knows, the galleon trade will play a major role in the iconographic transformation of both the icon and the devotion to the Soledad. When the highly controlled Spanish icon meets the indigenous traditions of the Americas, the somber Soledad turned into a celebration of loud colors and folk idioms. Well, they are very far from Spain and very far from the Padres Minimos, who actually don't have a strong presence both in Latin America and hardly any presence in the Philippines. Locals took liberties in painting the Soledad. The result now is the emergence of indigenous styles of Soledad iconography. Now, what you see to your left is actually an example of a Soledad from Antigua de Guatemala, and who is rather depicted as a plump woman with Native American features. She's an India. Her robes now decorated with very ornate gold patterns. At the center, you're seeing a Soledad from Cusco, Peru, and you can see that she's relatively tall and far from being sad. She seems to be happy, meditating with her roses. And to your right, you're going to see a Soledad from Mexico, very whimsical, very playful, almost drawn like that of a child with all those little angels and God the Father on top. So you could see that there are different styles emerging, and they cannot be controlled anymore because they are very far from Spain. So I'm forwarding this hypothesis. The artistic transformation of the Soledad in the Americas will find a striking parallel in the farthest outpost of the empire, which is the Philippines. At the height of the galleon trade, Cavite served as the main port of call for Spanish ships. Galleons arrive and disembark precisely in this walled town. As an international port, it is very probable that copies of the Soledad from Spain or probably the Americas reached the Philippines via Cavite. So whether it came miraculously through an apparition in 1667, which is primarily an oral tradition, or through the usual trade path, its exact origins and the name of the painter remains unknown. Scholar Regalado Trota Jose and restorer Baita Reyes, who by the way is the one who restored the painting in 1984, believe that the painting came all the way from Spain. Personally, I am convinced to support this, and I'm more inclined to support this hypothesis that this is a Spanish painting. For one, it perfectly fits the template of the Madrid Atelier. So one way of saying that all evidence suggests that the painting in Cavite is actually a Spanish painting. Here is the anatomy of the Spanish Portavaga icon. What you're seeing now is actually the image without its accessories. This was after it was stolen in 1984. Now, despite the visible damage, one can sense the original simplicity and intimacy of the composition. In its bare form, the Portavaga Virgin reminds us of Madrid Atelier's pattern D. Even the Western play of light and shadow seems to point to its Castilian origins. I think this becomes more convincing when we see how it looks like when it was restored, and therefore is nearer to its original look. Now we can see the details of the small painting. You could see actually the dark bluish curtains, the outline of the statue, which is actually so bethera. The Virgin herself is wearing the classical de luto, very simple, nothing decorative, nothing over the top. Even the furnishings are very, very minimal. So this is very much in the spirit of the official Madrid style. So there's every reason to believe that this painting is actually a Spanish one. But devotees don't see the painting as a museum piece. They see it actually as a supernatural representation of the Mother of God. And since the Soledad de Portabaga's fame rests more on its miraculous reputation, the picture becomes the vessel on which devotees express their love or gratefulness through precious gifts called ex votos. You will see in the picture how a simple canvas, like the one that I specified, turned into an ornate piece of art with all these trappings of gold and silver, filigrees, all melted from melted coins and jewelries of devotees and those people who became rich because of the galleon trade. As her fame grew, so does her image and its frame. So it's known in some anthropological circles as the aesthetics of clutter. The aesthetics of clutter is not a one-time, big-time makeover of sorts. The aesthetics of clutter is a very slow, organic process of accumulation. As more and more ex votos and offerings come, the image's visage, meaning its look, gradually changes through the centuries to the point that you could no longer recognize the original. And this is precisely the same phenomenon that happened to the once very simple image of the Virgin of the Rosary in Manaoag. When devotees make pilgrimages to the Hermitage in Cavite Puerto, what do they see? They do not see a simple painting from the Madrid school, but a highly stylized figure covered with all these knickknacks and all those stuff. What you see right now is the Soledad de Portabaga at the height of her glory. This altered visage is the one that remains embedded in the mind of the devotee and the artist. Thus, subsequent attempts to create copies and variants utilize the altered Portabaga as their template. What was once a mere copy or variant of the Madrileña Soledad has become the prototype of the artistic tradition in this part of the globe. So it seems as early as 1690, there is already the cult of the Nuestra Señora de la Soledad, which is entirely independent or unconnected with the one in Madrid. And the devotion of the Filipinos are very touchy. They are tangible, mobile, tactile. They want to touch things. So they have to bring the Soledad to their homes, their home altars, their bedrooms. And so the demand eventually led to the artistic transformation of the Soledad in the hands of local artists, most of whom are actually anonymous. So I want you to take note now of 5 locally made variants. Actually, there are hundreds of locally made variants, each of them unique, but I only have time for 5. So forgive me for this, but they are the most interesting ones as well. Okay? What we have now is a famous estampa on silk, which used to belong to the Jesuit College of Cavite before they were expelled. This print seems to herald the start of a uniquely Filipino interpretation of the Soledad. The basic elements of the one in Madrid remain, but artistic license is everywhere. The Holy Spirit makes his appearance. There are more instruments of the Passion beneath the Virgin. Take note also that the Virgin is now praying on a pillow or a cushion. And dominating the lower part of the picture, you see there a Manila galleon on the high seas. This is an obvious reference to the port of Cavite and the icon's role in the Manila-Acapulco galleon trade. It is a well-known fact that the icon was used to bless the galleons departing from Mexico. So there are 2 signatures of the Philippine style. First, the galleon. That's one. The galleon will always be there. And the shape of the Virgin is exaggeratedly pear-shaped. Para siyang peras or makopa or manggana exaggerated. And that seems to be typical of the Philippine school. This painting from San Isidro, Nueva Ecija is gaudy, almost cheerful, very, very different from the dark Portabaga. So you see here, the melancholic shadow of the Virgin totally disappeared, as if you're seeing it in broad daylight. Filipinos have this sense of horror vacui, a fear of space. So where there is negative space, they fill it every nook and cranny with all sorts of happy patterns. Now you will see that the Virgin's supposedly simple clothes is now star-studded, just like the Guadalupe. If you look at the frame, it's very, very charming. When you look closely at this frame, you will see the symbols of Holy Week randomly scattered all over the place. There's even the rooster of St. Peter there. But the essence of the Soledad is not lost. It's still there on top. There's an empty cross that dominates the upper part of the frame. The figure of Christ, although it's very, very clear, is nowhere to be found because it is still Good Friday. Christ is yet to be resurrected. But even despite the so-called sorrowful theme, you could see that the picture is a rather happy-colored one. One of the most interesting will be this Soledad de Camba from Camba Street, Binondo, which was a place that used to host a large Caviteño migrant population. It is one of the most unique specimens of the Philippine school. Here, the original reproduction is totally covered in textile and metal embellishments or risaf. What makes this unusual is that there's virtually no sense of perspective. This painting is totally flat. Now, the Virgin herself is ornamented with gold, and all the major elements of the 18th century Jesuit estamp are there. Curtains, galleons, instruments of the Passion. You will notice too those two angels which used to dangle on the curtain ropes. They are actually now flying towards the Virgin. This is obviously borrowed and modified from the Portavaga. That's why I call them the Portavaga cherubs, which is another signature of the Philippine school. Her golden sash with you're going to see also that the general impression is that this pearl shaped Soledad is with cryptic symbols floating all around her as if gravity does not exist. I personally like this particular image. It's one of the most charming of the Philippine Soledad. This Soledad of Buhi, this is from Camarines Sur, strikes me as a very folksy composition. The colors, very solid and bright. And when you look closely at the Virgin, she has become a visual platform for innovations. You will see that she has her Immaculate Heart, which is in bright red, and then it's pierced with 7 daggers, which is actually borrowed from another element, which is called the Nuestra Señora de los Dolores. Her robes are now gilded with gold. She now has a golden sash, and even her rosary has a conventional, unusual medallion attached to it. And she is in a standing position, which is unique among all Soledads. You're going to see here her feet is actually exposed. So unlike the standard Soledad, she is not kneeling. She is actually in the standing position. By now, it is pretty obvious in these examples that the Virgin is often very small in relation to the frame. In the Philippines, the frame itself becomes an extension of the Virgin, an amplification of her presence, and from the point of view of the artist, another platform to showcase his skill and creativity. This box frame Soledad is simply awesome, and I deliberately placed it at the end of the presentation to highlight how far the Soledad's iconography was transformed in the span of 2 centuries. There is a certain balance and maturity in this piece that I could say is truly Filipino. The Virgin is exaggerately pear-shaped and heavily embroidered, almost like a three-dimensional Philippine santo. Look at those Chinese-style ivory heads and hands. The drawn curtains are so realistic. The background reminds me of the Balducino of Nanabal. And you will see that galleon is no longer floating in the sea. It's literally flying in the air. And you will not see a single reference to the Passion of Christ. The empty cross is gone. The Virgin is now meditating on a galleon. I personally see in this particular bas-relief or box frame picture the full maturity of the Philippine school. And it is still actually evolving to this century, but I only focus on colonial examples. So there are many ways of viewing the Portabaga painting. As an artist myself, I see it as an important turning point as long as Philippine and Spanish sacred art history is concerned. Now, why do I think so? Number one, I think it's a noteworthy specimen of the rigid Madrid school of Soledad pictures. Second, I think it is a rare and dynamic piece of art. It's constantly evolving its looks and its visage through the centuries. And third, the Soledad de Portavaga, although by herself, not from the Philippines, in her altered look, will actually be the catalyst of an entirely new way of imagining the Virgin Mary in a very, very Filipino way. Thus, there is indeed a Philippine school of Soledad painting. These are three more reasons, artistic that is, why the icon of Our Lady of Solitude in Cavite truly deserves to be a national cultural treasure. Before I wrap up this talk, allow me to present the main sources used for this lecture. And special thanks to the organizations and people who shared their photographs for this talk. And special thanks to all people who made this research possible. To all of you who are so patient in listening to this lecture, thank you very much and have a good day.
Maraming salamat, Sir Alain. Very informative, no? Tracing the artistic transformation, no? Of the Virgen de la Soledad. No? At kung gusto makita ng ating mga kababayan ng original, no? Kung doon nagkakamali, nasa San Roque Church siya, no? Sa ngayon, sa likod ng altar, no? Nandoon nakalagay yung yung ating Virgen de Soledad de Portavaga. Wala pa sir tayo mga tanong, pero siguro kung pwede magtanong muna ako, no? Kasi yung mito, no, ng Soledad, na paano siya dumating sa Cavite City, no? Nakuha siya sa tabing dagat.
Naval Yard.
Naval Yard. Tapos may mga sentries na nakakita daw sa kanya bago siya makita. Ay tawag dito, merong mga apparitions na dumulutang siya sa dagat, no? Ano ba yung itong ganitong parang mito o stories ay adapted din sa ibang mga cities and municipalities relative to the Virgin?
Nagkaroon kami noon ng pagsasaliksik tungkol dito. Tinanong ko yung ilang membro ng Kofradia, ilang mga historiador tungkol dito. Ang unang kinaklaro nila, bagamat nagkaroon ng selebrasyon sa aparisyon ng Birhen ng Portabaga, lumalabas na walang opisyal na investigasyon na nangyari tungkol sa bagay na ito. Ikalawa, ang mga pangyayari o yung mga tradisyong oral o mga kwentong bayan ng Cavite sa Cavite Puerto ay katulad din ng mga mito o kwentong bayan na makikita sa ibang parte ng Latin America at saka ng Pilipinas. So there's a certain pattern here. Mm-hmm. Hindi natin sinasabi na dahil mito siya at hindi tayo sigurado kung alamat lang to, hindi ito mahalaga. Dahil isa sa pinakamahalagang elemento ng debosyon ay ang pagkakaroon ng alamat. Noong panahong yun, hindi pa tayo pumapasok sa punto na ang kada aparisyon o di kaya kwento ng pagpapakita ng Birhen ay kailangang isa lang sa isang matinding scientificong pagsasaliksik. Noong araw, sa pagkakaalam ko, isa o dalawa lamang na gantong pangyayari ang talagang sinaliksik. Ang pagkakaalam ko, ang unang sinaliksik ay ang Birhen ng Kaysasay. Meron ding pagsasaliksik sa Birhen ng Lanabal na hindi aparisyon kundi labanan. Okay, so dalawang ito ang alam ko na merong opisyal. Yung sa panahon ng colonial period, no, sila yung may opisyal na. Pero itong sa Portabaga, inamin naman nila na wala naman talagang klarong dokumento na mayroong investigasyon. Bagamat yung kwentong bayan ay masasabi nating essential part ng kanilang tradition. And remember, even that tradition is now considered as a national cultural treasure. Because what is rare about umuupo ka dyan, Manny, sa mga body na nagde-declare ng national treasures, di ba? Sa National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Isa sa mga bagay na unique dito, di ba? May tangible and intangible. Sa kaso ng Portabaga, gustong ideklara yung simbahan. Kaya lang, di ba, nasira. Wala yung simbahan. Ang dineklara ay yung mas mismong painting. So, movable, tangible heritage yun. At lahat ng mga intangible heritage, alamat, mga ritual, mga sayaw, mga kanta, tula na may kinalaman sa Portabaga is considered as national cultural treasure. See, it's one of the rare cases na meron tayong movable heritage na painting kasama plus intangible. So the task really for the Caviteños to really preserve this is high because they are not just tasked by the state to preserve the painting. They are actually tasked to preserve all the other traditions that revolve around the painting, and it's very, very rare.
Wow. No? So, kasi ako nababasa ko rin yung mga write-ups ni Father Vier Mendoza. No? At yun nga, paulit-ulit yung yung alamat, no, ng so siguro in light of yung historical documentation, sabi nga hindi mo siya pwedeng tingnan sa ganung bagay, no? Kasi,
yeah, definitely.
Pero because it already permeated for so long, no? Naging tradisyon na siya. Yung tradisyon na yun ang ngayon iniingatan. Coming from
yes.
So, pwede ba natin sabihin na yung isang programa na chismis doon, kasaysayan ngayon?
Well, andyan ba si Lord? Okay. Well, I wouldn't say it's chismis.
Okay.
Bakit nagkakaroon ng alamat? Hindi mo maipapaliwanag yun dahil meron nung nagchichismisan. Ang alamat ay bumubukal. Naku, papasok na tayo sa psikolohiya ngayon, sa archetypal na, we could call archetypal collective memory, no? Kaya rin ang rason, kung mapapansin mo, no, ang mga mitolohiya ng mga mahalaga o sagradong bagay, lagi silang umaangat mula sa tubig. At mapapansin mo to lalo na sa mga deity na babae, Birheng Maria o anuman. Mapapansin nyo, ilang bang santo sa Pilipinas ang nakitang lumulutang sa tubig? Halos lahat yata ng bayan may ganong storya. So, I don't think that it is chismisan lang, nakikibagay lang, and then nagchichismisan silang lahat. There is something in the collective memory of mankind which seems to suggest that the divine or the feminine side of the divine is always associated with water. So, I think papasok na tayo kay Carl Jung at kay Sigmund Freud, pero wala na tayong oras. Okay.
Well, siguro nga ang borderline dyan yung faith, no?
Yes, definitely.
It's the faith, no? Kung naniniwala ka, then that will be part of the yun nga, yung religious orientation.
Yes.
Pass through generation, yun yung tradition, no?
Yes.
Kaya nag-survive siya. Sir, wala pa kasing isang tanong, siguro mamaya pa, pero isa pang tanong, kasi nga kilala siya, di ba, sa Widow of the Galleon, no? So, talaga, can we truly say na Galleon, parang, kasi merong mga reyna ng Galleon, yun ang sabi ng iba, di ba? May mga write-up sinasabi, yan ang reyna ng Galleon. At actually, sa Cavite City, yan lang yata ang piyesta na dalawang linggo na magkasunod.
2 linggo.
2 linggo, no? Ganun katindi, no? So, yung yung relasyon niya sa Galleon, talaga ba natin pwede sabihin na siya ang reyna ng Galleon?
Well, we have to be very, very clear with this, no? Maraming magdi-dispute kasi, there are still people na pinaglalaban-laban ng Virgin Mary as if she is several persons. There's no doubt na, remember, there is also the Virgin of Peace and Good Voyage in Antipolo. Okay, that's also associated with the Galleons.
Yes, also.
Okay, and you must also take note that the Virgin of Antipolo was in Cavite for almost a decade. Before the Portabaga entered the picture. So there was a time during the Dutch Wars from 1647 onwards, or even earlier than that, yung Birhen sa Antipolo, binabayan sa Cavite. So tumigil yan sa Cavite. So everybody knows it as the Virgin of Peace and Good Voyage, the protectors of the galleons. So at that particular moment in time, when that statue of the Virgin was in Cavite, she was the patroness, she was the Virgin of predilection. Because at that time, wala pang Portabagang umi-enter sa picture. And so when we analyze the story of the Portavaga, it appears to appear into the picture after the Virgin of Antipolo went back to Antipolo proper. Meaning, after the Dutch Wars, tapos na yung threat, wala nang mga posibilidad na magkaroon pa ng mga gera sa Olandes at pagdaong sa Cavite at sa Maynila. Inaakyat uli yon at muli siyang sumasakay sa mga galleons. So, I mean, the reason here is that hindi rin magandang tingnan kung pinaglalaban-laban mo ang icon. Sino ba talaga yung Birhen ng Antipolo is associated with the galleon? Our Lady of Portavaga is associated with the galleon. I think in reality is that they always invoke the image or the name of the Virgin Mary every time they would follow. Now, the Virgin of Antipolo would eventually stay permanently there, high up there in the shrines, no? So bihira siyang lalabas. Lalabas lang to pag sasakay ng vapor. Pag kailangan talaga sa mga, I think that she had around, kinipilang ko nga sa, mabibilang mo sa kamay ang kanyang voyages. Hindi naman siya sumasama lagi lahat papuntang Mexico pabalik, papuntang Mexico pabalik. So in the interregnum na papuntang Mexico pabalik, no, there is proof apparently that when it comes to the blessing, kasi possible na nakasakay na yung Birhen ng Portabaga doon at wala namang competition sa mga Birhen, isang tao lang naman yan, they would use the smaller Portabaga. This is probably by the 1700s na. By that time, the Portavaga cult has already strengthened in Cavite. Siya yung ginagamit pang bless ng galleon. So, may sariling image doon sa mga galleons. Siya yung ginagamit pang bless as long as the galleons. And you know, there are other images which are associated with the galleons. The Virgen de Guia was associated with the galleons before Portavaga and before the Antipolo. Kailangan lahat ng dumadaang galleon sa Maynila, dadaan at magsasalbo dyan ng salute. So, it is something that is fluid. Nagkataon lamang that probably when the Portavaga entered the picture, there is no dominant image of the Virgin because the Virgin of Antipolo is no longer there. So it eventually developed into a highly popular thing to the point that ang popularity niya is interesting. Palaos na ang galleons nang naging very, very popular siya. So by the time ang popularity niya is talagang nag-shoot noong 19th century, noong wala ng galleons, yung galleon nandun pa rin. Kasi it has no longer become a symbol of just the galleons, but it's a symbol of trade. And there are rumors, ito yung chismis lang, but hindi ko confirm. But kaya sinasabi ko yung chismis lang, that the procession in Noli Me Tangere is actually based on the procession of the Soledad. And apparently, as being described by Jose Rizal.
Yeah. Grabe, no? Talagang nakikita natin mga kababayan, no? Meron talagang, sabi nga, maganda yun. Maraming, Virgin Marys of the Galleon. So, once naging chair ng Philippine Academic Consortium for Latin American Studies, yung PACLAS, no? At karaniwan namin hinahanapan ng parallelism sa point of point of comparison, yung Latin American research, no, saka yung Philippine research, no. Ngayon, karaniwan naghuhook doon sa galleon, kasi ito yung kumukonekta sa Latin America, Mexico, saka sa Pilipinas. So, can we consider na itong pag-aaral sa Nuestra Soledad de Portavaga ay isang sabi nating legacy or contribution of this Pacific exchange between the two seaboards.
I think that future researchers, I'm encouraging the members of the Cofradia de Soledad, no, to really continue their research, and they have a very, very good material dossier on the Virgin. You know why I'm saying so? Because there are other popular shrines to Our Lady of Solitude, but we can pinpoint 3. Sa mundo ngayon, meron talagang tatlo. Kasi nawala na yung original, yung kay Becerra, yung pinakita ko na original na statue. That original statue, which is basihan ng lahat ng Soledad, sinira yun ng Spanish Civil War ng mga communist forces. So because of the anti-clerical sentiment at that time, so tatlo yung natirang very popular. One is the Virgen de la Soledad in Calle La Paloma in Madrid, and this occurred only much after mas bata pa to sa Soledad de Portabaga. Pero ang and you will notice there, patrona siya ng mga bumbero of all trades, no? Firemen. Pero ang interesting sa akin is there is a one place in Mexico, ikaw nakarating ka na sa Mexico, alam mo yan, yung sa Oaxaca, yung meron silang doong Nuestra Señora de la Soledad de Oaxaca na patrona rin ng mga sailors. Pero ang Oaxaca, wala siya sa tabing dagat. Okay, and what's interesting about the Oaxaca case is that yung piyesta sa Oaxaca, yung mga terminologies na ginagamit sa piyesta, Palma, Crucidad, etc., are actually to be seen in the fiesta in Cavite. Then nobody has yet done a research on that because when you look at the fiestas in Oaxaca, Mexico, ang piyesta doon, katulad ng piyesta sa Cavite with at least Cavite Puerto. Kasi it's understandable that there will be a Mexican connection because the Mexican crews would stay in Cavite Puerto. They would bring the tamales, they would bring practically all the fiesta associated stuff. So I think this is an important link and that's why I'm highlighting kasi maraming may question. Paano naging national cultural treasure? Tapos, ang image ng Portabaga is always associated with Cavite. How can be a Caviteño thing be national? Now, I have to clarify that. Number one, ang unang basihan daw, pinakalumang dated painting. Yes, so far, it's the oldest dated Marian painting. What if makadiscover tayo in the near future na mayroon pa palang mas luma, di tanggal na yung honor? Hindi naman ganun Because the idea of having a national cultural treasure, hindi ito labanan ng patandaan. But rather, ganong kahalaga ang isang bagay sa national narrative. If you will notice, the devotion to the Portabaga extended beyond Cavite. And you're going to notice most of the samples that you would see, the beautiful samples of the Philippine school, are not to be found in Cavite. They are to be found from as far away as Pampanga to as south as Zamboanga. So this is national. Ikatlo, may connection siya sa Pacific trade. So para siyang, isa lang siyang painting na malinggit. Pero yung relevance niya, sabi nga nila, huwag niyong ismulin ang maliliit na painting because the Portabaga, beyond its religious function, is actually our connection with the global trade.
Yeah.
Every time you look at it, you will realize that there was one person who painted something which was traded from Madrid to Guadalquivir, to Seville, then to Mexico, etc., balik, etc. And you will see how much they have, this inter-Pacific trade has become mutual. In fact, ang nakakatuwa lang dito is that because of the centuries, nobody knows each other's existence. I do remember Father Vir Mendoza visiting Calle La Paloma in Madrid. And so he brought with him the image of Our Lady of Portabaga and showed the rector of Calle La Paloma. This is our Virgin of Portabaga. And, the parish priest of, the rector of La Paloma Shrine was saying, "Oy, yan yung sa amin, ba't ganyan?" Okay? I don't know. So they are so excited that there are similarities. And I think the Portabaga is one of the few items of exchange na very consistent ang look at nagpapakita lang siya sa mga bansa na may kinalaman sa Pacific Galleon trade. So it's really, for me, that fact alone, national treasure na siya. May miracle man o hindi.
Actually nga, 'di ba, yung October 8 considered as the parang Galleon Day yun international.
International Galleon Day.
Oo.
At it's interesting, Manny, lahat ng Latin American countries may Virgin of Solitude na version. So from Puerto Rico to Cuba, dire-diretso hanggang Philippines. Pero ano ang connection nila? Sila yung Spanish Empire, yung global connections sa Galleon. So I think widow of the Galleons is really an appropriate term.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that very enlightening moments. Ha?
Walang ano man.
Si Philip Medina from Silang, kasi ito taong simbahan to, pero researcher to ng mga religious icons din. No? Ang comment niya, I love this lecture. Congratulations, Sir Alain. Maliban sa tubig, natatagpuan rin ang divine feminine sa kabundukan tulad ng mga mito ng Birhen ng Antipolo at Silang.
Yeah, because ang 'di ba ang mga kuweba associated with the womb. Yung matres ng babae. So if you will notice that either tatlo yan, ma'am, yun na napansin ko, no? Tubig, kuweba o bundok, which is associated with the woman, and laging sa taas ng puno. Ewan ko lang, sa Portabaga walang punong pag-uusapan kasi talagang dagat, no? Pero yung iba, mapapansin mo, bakit ang Virgin Mary laging nakikita sa taas ng puno? You will notice that with Manawag. Manawag kay Sasay, Antipolo, all of them are appearing on top of trees. What is it in a tree? Collectively speaking, na symbolic. Diba? So maraming salamat po sa comment. Napakaganda po nun.
Wala na